Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Tracy with JDL Threads and thank you for joining me today. This is Autism Awareness Month, so what I've decided to do is go ahead and make a nice autism patch that I did get off of embroiderydesigns.com. No, I didn't digitize this one. Digitize some things, more difficult things. I'm still working on that, so I would just rather buy it. Alright, so I did purchase that from embroiderydesigns.com. What I'm going to be doing today is using my 6.25 by 8.25 mighty hoop to get this design done. We're also going to be using some cutaway stabilizer, and I'm going to be using 4mm plastic as my fabric because I'm trying to use different ways other than using up all of my fabric and having to use all that glue, because I'm trying to get away from using the glue method where you cut it out like an applique and put it back down and have it do the satin stitch. So I've been practicing on this new method, so I'm just going to show you guys what I've been practicing to get this design done. Also, we're going to be needing our little scissors to cut away our stabilizer once we get ready to put that satin border around our plastic. So yeah. Again, thanks for joining me today. Head on over to the craft table so we can go ahead and get this project hooped up in the mighty hoop, and then I'll go ahead and get it put on the RICOMA MT1501 embroidery machine so I can get this thing stitched out for you guys. So come on, let's go on over to my craft table and get this thing hooped up. Okay everybody, so as usual, all we're going to do is we're going to take apart our mighty hoop, and I'm going to sit my cutaway stabilizer on the bottom part of my mighty hoop with the word size down, and this longer part here facing me. I'm going to put my cutaway stabilizer on top of that hoop, and then I'm just going to use my 4mm plastic, which I am using as fabric today. Going to put that on top, and then I am going to just simply put my mighty hoop right on top of there. I'm going to go ahead and get out some of these wrinkles on my fabric, my plastic, and we are ready to go. Just like that, you hear it's real taut, and we are ready to go. And let's head over to the embroidery machine. The design is already set up in the MT1501, and we're going to go ahead and get this thing stitched out. So let's go on over to the embroidery machine. All right, everybody. So I'm over at the RICOMA MT1501, and all I'm going to do is I am going to slide in my embroidery hoop, making sure that I hear the click. And I'm just going to cut right in front of the camera here. And everything's all set up, so I don't need to do a trace because I've already did a test stitch on this design. So I am going to just simply press start, and we can get this design started. Here we go. And of course my thread came out of my needle, because let me go ahead and get that rethreaded real quick, and we'll get busy. Okay, everybody, and with that, my outline is done. So just like on a regular patch that you're gonna cut out around the outlines here so that you can put on your satin stitch, or you're gonna do your applique to cut out your patch around your design. We're gonna do the same thing, only this time we're gonna do it in reverse. Instead of doing it on the top of my plastic fabric, I'm gonna cut out the bottom of my cutaway stabilizer so that when it goes to do that satin stitch, once we turn it over, it will just satin stitch only around the plastic, and then we have our cutaway stabilizer as some form of our support if we want to go ahead and put on our heat and bond glue to the back. Or you can also just go ahead and you can just tack it down with a zigzag stitch or a straight stitch to whatever garment you're trying to put it on, if you want to do it that way. I think what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and use my heat and bond to try to bond it down to my jacket. So I will show you guys that once it's done with this satin stitch around the patch. But let me go ahead and just show you. You want to just take your scissors, your little snippers, and you want to just make a little cut into your cutaway stabilizer like so. And you want to be careful that you don't cut your plastic, right? I don't want to cut my plastic, so I'm just cutting the cutaway stabilizer on the bottom, keeping my plastic on the top intact. So I'm going to go ahead and finish cutting that out, and I'll be back so we can go ahead and get this satin stitch done. All right, everybody. So as you can see, I've went ahead and I've cut out my cutaway stabilizer on the back of my patch, and my plastic on the front is still intact. All I did was I took some of my sewing pins and I just got my cutaway stabilizer out of the way so that when it goes to sew that satin stitch, it won't catch any of this extra cutaway stabilizer, right? That way I don't have to lift the patch off to reposition it. I don't have to use any glue. All I have to do is slide my hoop back into my embroidery machine, and then it'll go ahead and it'll finish putting those satin stitches around. And try not to cut the top of your plastic. If you cut it in a little spot, just try not to cut it, you know, too much, because you want to try to keep that plastic intact. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and slide my hoop back into my embroidery machine. I'm going to frame it back in, and we are going to go ahead and continue with our satin stitch outline border. Now what I did, because when I did it the first time, is I did another set of run stitches around, because initially I did take the patch off of the plastic and put it back down with the glue. So I didn't go back to take out that second set of run stitches. So you're going to see it run a couple of more times before it does that satin stitch, but that's only because I had added that extra set of stitches in when I was going to lift the pattern off of the plastic and reposition it. But now I'm not doing that, so we're just going to go ahead and run it. Everything's still going to stitch out the same, and it's going to be great. So here we go. This way now you still have a little bit of this cutaway stabilizer on the bottom to catch your patch when it goes around to do that last and final satin stitch, giving a little bit more support. everybody, so all I got to do is go back and cut off some of these jump stitches that I have here. And basically, since the embroidery is done, no glue needed, all we're going to do is we are just going to peel it out just like that. And it just makes my life so much simpler just to peel it out. Instead of have to do all that repositioning. And then I'm just going to go around and burn the edges with my heat gun or my lighter to get those extra loose threads out. And it'll be so perfect, you guys. Okay, everybody, so here is my patch after I pulled it out of my plastic and I went around it with my lighter just to melt in the rest of that plastic and any threads that were hanging loose. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to take my heat and bond, double-sided heat and bond, and we're going to stick it on the back because I want to go ahead and stick this onto my jacket with my heat and bond. So you guys know me, I have some extra pieces. Now this is just for me, so I'm just going to apply the heat and bond to my patch like so. I think I'm going to do it one side and then the other side so that I can get it overlapped. So yeah, I think I will do it like that because if you can see, if I just put it like this, it's not going to fully cover the patch and I want it to be fully covered. And I did give me a new HTV rod little iron, you guys, with the cord attached because my other little iron, the cord kept coming out. So let's go ahead and get this pressed. We're going to press it with the sticky side down to the back of the patch. And I'm just going to be putting it on top of a piece of parchment paper. Like so. So here we go. My iron is all nice and warmed up. So I'm just going to go over it just like this with my patch. So I can get that glue adhered on like so. All right, then I'm just going to let that sit for a few seconds. All right, then I'm just going to go ahead and peel it up. Now, just be careful because you see you do have this sticky part here that's not on the patch, and you don't want to get that all on the front of your nice covered patch. So just be careful with that, everybody, okay? Now that it has had time to relax a little bit, I'm just going to peel back this back portion just at the bottom of the patch so I can overlap the heat and bond with this other piece that I have. So just pull it back just right here at the back. And you guys see that it is stuck on there really, really good. All right. So I'm going to fold my parchment paper in half now because I don't want to get none of that glue again on the top of my patch. And I think this time what I'll do is I'll heat up the bottom part of this patch before I put that other piece of heat and bond on the bottom. And then we're just going to put it on. We're going to overlap it and we're going to stick it down just like this, you guys. And I think that should be good. We're going to give it just a minute just to rest. Now I'm going to peel it off from the back like that. And again, you see that I have this little bit of sticky part around here. So I'm going to be careful not to let that get on the front of my patch. So I'm going to fold this heat and bond in one more time. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to go through now and peel off this other back side. of the heat and bind. All right, and so we got it peeled off, you guys, you see? And now it is stuck all the way on the back of that patch. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut this around, some of this sticky off, like so. All right, so we got that off. Then I'm just going to cut through these little fingers, make a slash on the inside of these fingers, because I'm just going to fold the extra heat and bind inside of those fingers. All right. Let me just move that way. And then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to fold in a little bit of the extra, you guys. Like that. All right, so now I have all the glue folded in onto the inside of the fingers. And there you have it. So all I would do now at this point is I would just take my paper backing and I'm just going to put my hand back on this paper backing until I get ready to press. Like so. And there you have it, you guys. Now it's ready to press on my jacket. Once I finally get my jacket sewn all together, I'll show you guys what that looks like once I press it on my jacket. All right, so that is my autism awareness patch. And again, my name is Tracy with JDL Threads, and I want to thank you guys for joining me in today's video, and I will see you guys in the next video.